Hello, and welcome to my presentation on the deep dive I took into the design challenge. I am Paige James, and today I'm going to walk you through the solution I found to a problem in immigration. So, we're going to start by looking at my empathy map at a glance. You can see that this is broken down into things that were said, things that were done, things that were thought, and things that were felt. I have, just at a glance, I have four different lines coming off of each section, and each one of them represents something that stuck out to me in the video that we watched, in the interview that we got to partake in with the Marks, as well as the two interviews I conducted with educators that I know. So, this is kind of like a brief overview, some of the things that really stuck out to me in each of those experiences that I had. I went into even more detail in the following slides. So on this slide, you will see that in This Illegal American Life, I pointed out some things that were said, done, thought, and felt. Overall, this was a big highlight for me so that it opened my eyes to somebody's immigration story, and watching the video is really what got me thinking about how immigrants are treated in the education sector. So it didn't just focus on an immigrant that was going to college or going to school. It went into the livelihoods of other people as well, including families. But it really struck a chord with me watching an immigrant be the first one to go to college and what that journey looked like for her. In the interview with the Marks, I had some big takeaways from this. I really enjoyed the differences between Mark B and Mark V's story. It seemed that one of them, one took a journey, Mark B, that was more so by choice, whereas Mark V didn't have too much of a choice in the situation, but once he got older, he did make the choice to stay here. So I really enjoyed listening to them also working in the education field and the struggles that they went through. I didn't enjoy hearing it, but it was very informative to know that they both had different struggles and they both went through different journeys, but in the end, they both had the same result with their citizenship and creating empathy for other people. And then in my interviews, I interviewed an educator who works locally as a Spanish teacher. She spent some time abroad. Her name is Megan. And I also interviewed a former administrator who currently lives in Oldham County or Louisville, Kentucky. And she worked with a diverse population of immigrants. And she is also the daughter of two immigrants. So it was really interesting getting their point of view, having studied abroad in one of the educators' cases and one being part, having her own immigration journey and story to share. Um, they both are very empathetic and charismatic for immigrants, especially in the classroom. And it was through these interviews that I realized through both of them that there are some issues in the education system and there are ways that it could be corrected. And even if the solution I came up with isn't the right one, isn't the one that's going to work in every single school, it is something that at least teachers, educators, administrators can keep in mind whenever they are dealing with families that might have a language barrier or might have fear involved in getting their children enrolled in school. So let's jump into defining what the issue is. So, in defining, we look at who our user is, what the need is, and what the insights are. So, the user in my issue would be immigrant students and families that, so families that have children that are being enrolled in school. This includes documented, undocumented, it includes refugees, it includes students and families with diverse backgrounds. And the problem and solution I focused on was for public schools. So public schools would be considered one of the users in this issue as well. The need. I found that the need would be to have a federally funded cultural slash diversity liaison at each school. The reason I feel that this is beneficial and that this is a need is because having one person that can focus on language barriers, inclusion, events that raise cultural awareness, and tutoring for those students that fall behind because of their cultural or diverse differences. That is a role that this liaison could encompass and fill. The insight behind this is that right now there seems to be unequal treatment in the schools, if not by the administration and teachers, then at least among peers and not having awareness. So the insight would be that we would want to bring equal treatment into the schools, have immigrants be socially accepted. We would close the gap in the language barrier. We would find assistance for immigrant families. We would reduce fear that they would be deported just because their students or their children are in school. And we would also promote a sense of community among everyone in the school, regardless of their citizenship. So, defining the problem through videos and research and interviews, I found that there's an issue with immigration and education, um, especially with immigrants among their peers. It Through my research, it doesn't seem to be a big issue with administrators and teachers. Administrators and teachers are aware that it's the law that every student should be able to get an education. So educators and administrators are very open to making sure that no child gets left behind, everybody gets an education which they deserve. So the problem is that a lot of students that immigrate to this country are already behind a few steps, either because they didn't get the same education in their former country or they're so used to working rather than going to school. There might be a language barrier, or it just might be the stress of not having that community, not being socially accepted. So, this is the problem that we are facing in schools. So, my solution is to create a position for a cultural and diversity liaison. This is a job that is already in some schools. So I did some research in order to come up with this job description. And this liaison would bridge student to student, student to school, student to family, and family to community. And they would work on making sure that all of the students feel empowered and they feel connected to their culture and not that they have to deny it just to fit in at school. So, getting this role as a cultural or diversity liaison, the job would be to help promote friendships, help promote diversity rather than feel like people need to feel like exclusions need to happen because of cultural differences. They would host events, they would find tutoring, they would help with translating or finding a translator if needed. It would just be the go to person to help eliminate the struggles that immigrants, refugees, people with diverse backgrounds might feel. A couple of highlights from the job description that would be posted would be that they would help diverse students and their families navigate and be successful in school, whatever that may look like for them. Either, as mentioned before, finding a translator, finding a tutor, making sure that they feel a sense of community, that they have friends, that they aren't falling behind in any of those ways that we all learn in school. um, they would be implementing cultural events so that all cultures can be celebrated. They would also just check in on families, because not all families are going to be outward with how they're feeling or how they're struggling, because there will most likely be fear within these families, knowing, especially if they are undocumented or not citizens of this country. So um, the cultural and diversity liaison will mainly just help with awareness and help put these families at ease. And then I also came up with this journey map to show how I got from plan A to from here's the issue, here's the solution. Um, this is just kind of a hypothetical situation of how it might happen. So, um, an educator or an administrator would realize that there's an issue, having either like with a language barrier or bringing a student up to grade level. So, knowing that there is that issue, they would then take notice and understand that there's a need. From that need, they would have to come up with a plan and do research to figure out, how do we take care of this issue. So after they research and find that there could possibly be some money in the budget, they come up with a plan to use some of the money that immigrants bring in but don't take away from our funding, and use that extra money to hire a federally funded cultural and diversity liaison in every public school. So, with this funding, the job posting would be listed, and then hopefully from the listing, hiring would happen as soon as possible, and then after that, change making will begin, because having this cultural and diversity liaison in the schools, some changes might start to happen, and more acceptance might be spread. And then from there, that is the end of my presentation. So if you would like to jot down what you liked, what you wish, what if, give any ideas on how the presentation went and what your thoughts are on it, um, very open to that. And I think that it is, if my way is not the right way, I think it's worth exploring all the different ways that this could work. And then lastly, I do have some works cited where I got some of my information from. So thank you, and I hope everybody has a great weekend.